Never show your face here again, father shouted. Yet at mother's celebration, my sister's date looked up and said, "Mr. Director, what a surprise. Having you here listening to me means a lot. Watch until the end and let me know in the comments which city you're watching from. I'm really curious to see how far my story is reaching. Never show your face here again." My father's words echoed through the dining room, his fist slamming against the mahogany table so hard that water glasses trembled. The beautiful family dinner he'd arranged had transformed into my execution. I sat frozen, the words I'd just spoken hanging in the air between us. I'm opening my own art studio instead of joining Reynolds Consulting. My mother's face had drained of color. My sister Jessica smirked from across the table, eyes gleaming with satisfaction. The career path my father had meticulously planned for me, the business degree I'd obediently completed, the position he'd created specifically for me at his firm, all of it rejected in a single sentence. "Amanda," my mother whispered, her voice barely audible, "please reconsider what you're saying." "I've made my decision," I replied, my voice steadier than my hands. "I've already signed the lease on a small space downtown." My father's face darkened to a dangerous shade of crimson. "With what money?" "My savings. From the barista job I'd been working." "The one you said was for extra spending cash," he sputtered. "While living under my roof? Eating my food?" Jessica leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. "Wow, Amanda. Bold move, throwing away a six-figure job for some artsy pipe dream." I'd expected resistance, even anger, but what happened next shattered everything I thought I knew about family. My father stood up, his 6'2" frame towering over the table. "I have supported you for 28 years. Paid for your education. Secured your future. And this is how you repay me?" His voice had gone dangerously quiet. "By throwing it all away to play with paints?" "Dad, it's not playing. I've been working toward this for years." "Years of deception," he roared. "Using my money to plan your betrayal." "Robert, please," my mother attempted, but fell silent when he shot her a glare. "I'm not betraying anyone," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "I'm just choosing my own path." "Then you can pay for that path yourself," he declared. "Starting tonight. I want you out of this house by morning. Your credit cards are canceled. Your car, which is in my name, stays in the garage. And don't expect a single dollar from your trust fund." The room went silent. Jessica's smugness vanished, replaced by shock. Even she hadn't expected this nuclear option. "Robert," my mother whispered, "surely we can discuss this." "There's nothing to discuss," he snapped. "She's made her choice." I stood on shaky legs. "So that's it? 28 years of being your daughter erased because I won't be your employee?" "You're choosing paint over family," he said coldly. "I'm choosing happiness over surrender," I countered, tears now streaming down my face. "And if you can't see the difference, then maybe you never knew me at all." "Never show your face here again," he repeated, eyes cold as winter stone. "Not until you come to your senses." I looked at my mother, silently pleading for intervention, but she stared down at her plate. Jessica examined her manicure, avoiding my gaze. I walked out that night with one suitcase and my art supplies, sleeping on a friend's couch while I prepared my empty studio to become both workspace and temporary home. In the weeks that followed, not one member of my family called to check if I was alive. 7 months passed. I worked myself to exhaustion, taking design commissions during the day and bartending at night. My small studio gradually transformed from an empty space into something with potential. I hung my best pieces, created a website, and printed business cards I couldn't really afford. Then, on a rainy Tuesday, I received a text message from my mother. "It's my birthday celebration this Saturday. Your father doesn't know I'm contacting you. Please come. 7 p.m. I stared at the phone, heart racing. 7 months of silence, and now this? I typed and deleted a dozen responses before settling on, "We'll think about it." Saturday evening found me standing outside my parents' colonial-style home, raindrops sliding down my umbrella as I gathered courage. Through the windows, I could see the party in full swing, my father's colleagues, family friends, relatives. Taking a deep breath, I rang the doorbell. My mother answered, her practiced smile faltering when she saw me. "Amanda," she whispered. "You came." I stepped inside, handing her the small watercolor painting I'd created as a gift. She accepted it with trembling hands, her eyes darting nervously toward the living room where my father held court. "Let me take your coat," she said, somehow making it sound like a warning. As I entered the living room, familiar faces turned toward me. Some smiled, others quickly looked away, uncomfortable with my presence. I spotted Jessica across the room, hanging on the arm of her new boyfriend, some corporate type with a square jaw and perfect hair. And then my father saw me. His expression hardened, glass of scotch freezing halfway to his lips. The tension in the room thickened until Jessica's boyfriend suddenly looked up, recognition flashing across his face. "Ms. Director," he exclaimed, "what a surprise." Every head turned. Jessica's face contorted in confusion. "Wait," she said slowly, "you know my sister?" "Know her," he laughed. "Her gallery is the talk of the downtown art scene. We're considering her for the major installation in our new corporate headquarters." My father's glass stopped midair as the words sank in. The studio he'd mocked, my artsy pipe dream, was now being considered for a commission by the very corporate world he worshipped. The irony burned as sharply as the tears I fought to hold back. I fled my mother's birthday party before my father could throw me out a second time. The shock on everyone's faces, especially Jessica's, had given me a fleeting moment of satisfaction that quickly dissolved into hollow emptiness. That night, I curled up on the thin mattress I'd placed in the corner of my studio. The space was barely 600 square feet, with concrete floors that chilled my bones and windows that rattled with each passing truck. This wasn't how I'd imagined my artistic breakthrough, sleeping next to paint-splattered tarps, showering at the gym down the street, and eating ramen for the third night in a row. I stared at my phone, half expecting someone from my family to call after the scene at the party. But the screen remained stubbornly dark. Not even my mother reached out. By morning, I'd made a decision, would never again wait for their approval. I was done begging for scraps of love from people who couldn't see past their own expectations. "This is my life now," I whispered to the empty studio as dawn broke through the dusty windows. "And I'm going to make it worth something." The next few months were a brutal lesson in survival. I took any commission I could get, logos for local businesses, custom paintings for new homeowners, design work for struggling startups who could barely afford me. On weekends, I bartended at a gastropub 8 blocks away, returning to my studio with aching feet at 3 a.m. My one luxury was coffee from the shop across the street, where the owner, Ellie, sometimes slipped me day-old pastries. "Artists need fuel," she'd say with a wink. One particularly difficult Tuesday, I just finished a 16-hour stretch of work when my phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. "Dad's asking if you've come to your senses yet. Says the job offer is still open if you apologize and give up this studio nonsense. Should I tell him you're still being stubborn?" I stared at the message, anger burning through my exhaustion. After 7 months, this was all they had to say. No concern for my welfare, my health, not even a simple, "How are you?" I typed, "Tell him I'm doing just fine on my own." Then deleted it. I typed, "The studio nonsense is now paying my bills." Deleted again. Finally, I simply wrote, "No, thank you," and turned off my phone. 2 days later, Jessica texted again, "You're making this harder than it needs to be. You know Dad will never change. Just apologize." I didn't respond. Only my grandmother maintained contact, calling every Sunday evening like clockwork. "I'm not taking sides," she'd say, "but I won't abandon you either." She sent small checks that I initially refused but eventually accepted when winter hit and my heating bills skyrocketed. "It's not charity," she insisted. "It's an investment in your future." The studio became my sanctuary and prison. I worked 18-hour days, forgetting to eat, sometimes forgetting to sleep. My hands cracked and bled from the cold and chemicals. But slowly, piece by piece, my portfolio grew. One rainy March afternoon, a woman in an impeccable gray suit walked into my studio without an appointment. She examined my work silently, moving from piece to piece with analytical precision. "I'm Diana Spencer," she finally said, handing me a business card that read Lancaster Gallery, Director. "Your use of mixed media is intriguing." I stammered a thank you, suddenly conscious of my paint-stained jeans and the chipped mug of cold coffee in my hand. "How long have you been working in this space?" she asked. "About 8 months," I answered, fighting the urge to straighten the chaotic piles of materials around us. She nodded, eyes still scanning my pieces. "And with no formal representation?" "I've been focused on building my portfolio." "Well," she said, turning to face me fully, "I think it's time you had proper gallery exposure. I'd like to feature 3 of your pieces in our Emerging Artists exhibition next month." My heart stuttered. Lancaster Gallery was one of the most prestigious in the city. Being featured there could change everything. "Are you serious?" I asked before I could stop myself. She smiled, the first crack in her professional demeanor. "I never joke about art, Ms. Reynolds." The exhibition opened on a crisp April evening. I stood in Lancaster Gallery wearing a black dress I'd splurged on, watching as people actually studied my work, discussed it, photographed it. Diana introduced me to collectors, critics, and other artists with established careers. "Your Urban Decay series has already received 2 offers," she whispered during a brief lull. "And Jackson Werner wants to meet you. He's considering commissioning a piece for his downtown office." Jackson Werner. The real estate developer whose buildings dominated the city skyline. The same developer Jessica's boyfriend worked for. The irony wasn't lost on me. Neither was the pain when, despite my grandmother's efforts, not a single member of my immediate family attended the exhibition. The following week, Diana called me into her office. "I've been thinking about your future," she said without preamble. "Your work has commercial appeal without compromising its artistic integrity. That's rare." I waited, sensing there was more. "I have a proposal," she continued. "I have an investor interested in opening a satellite gallery focusing on sustainable art and design. We need a director. Someone with vision and hands-on experience." I blinked, certain I'd misheard. "You want me to be a gallery director? But I've never." "You've been running your own business for nearly a year. You understand both the creative and practical sides. And you have something that can't be taught, an eye for what connects with people." I don't know what to say. "Say yes," Diana replied simply. "The salary is competitive. You'll have creative control with reasonable oversight. And," she added with a knowing look, "you can finally move out of that studio you've been sleeping in." I froze. "How did you?" "Amanda, I've been in this business for 30 years. I recognize the signs of an artist living in their workspace." Her expression softened. "Take the offer. You've proven yourself. Now it's time to thrive, not just survive." That night, I sat alone in my studio, surrounded by the paintings that had sustained me through months of isolation and doubt. For the first time since leaving my parents' house, I allowed myself to cry, not from sadness, but from sheer relief. As dawn broke, my phone buzzed with a text. I expected Diana with more details about the offer, but instead saw my mother's name. "It's been a year. Your father's birthday dinner is next Saturday. Perhaps it's time to mend fences? Jessica says her boyfriend might be able to help you find something more stable than your current situation." I stared at the message, a strange calm settling over me. They still had no idea what my life had become. They still thought I was failing, desperate, ready to crawl back. I typed my response carefully, "I'll be there." I accepted Diana's offer the next morning. By the end of the week, I had signed a contract to become the director of Horizon Gallery, Lancaster's new satellite location focused on sustainable art and emerging artists. The irony wasn't lost on me. after a year of struggling and being told my artistic dreams were worthless, I was now being handed the keys to my own gallery. "We'll open in 6 weeks," Diana explained as we toured the empty space downtown. "The renovation team starts tomorrow. You'll have input on the layout, lighting, everything." I walked through the cavernous room, sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, and fought back tears. This was more than a job, it was validation. "I still can't believe you chose me," I admitted. Diana's expression softened. "Amanda, I've been in this industry 30 years. I can spot real talent, and more importantly, I can spot hunger. You have both." That evening, I started packing up my studio-turned-apartment. As I carefully wrapped my unsold pieces, my phone buzzed with a message from Jessica. "Dad wants to know if you're coming to his birthday dinner. Yes or no?" I stared at the screen. A year ago, I'd been thrown out of that house, told never to return unless I abandoned my dreams. Now I was about to helm a gallery while my family still thought I was failing. Part of me wanted to ignore the invitation, to let them wonder and worry. But another part, the part that had spent a year proving myself, wanted to walk into that house as someone new. I typed, "Yes. I'll be there." The week before my father's birthday was a whirlwind. Diana introduced me to critics, collectors, and artists who would be featured in our opening exhibition. I signed the lease on a real apartment, small but mine, with actual furniture and a separate bedroom. I opened a new bank account for my significantly improved salary. And I commissioned a custom suit from a local designer whose career I'd helped launch through Lancaster Gallery. "Something that says, 'I'm in charge,'" I told her with a smile. The Saturday of my father's birthday, I stood outside the family home feeling like a stranger. The last time I'd been here, for my mother's birthday, I'd slipped away before confrontation could erupt. This time would be different. I rang the doorbell, smoothing down my impeccably tailored charcoal suit, touching the simple silver pendant at my throat, my first executive purchase. My mother opened the door, her expression shifting from practiced hostess smile to genuine surprise. "Amanda," she said, eyes widening as she took in my transformation. "You look different," I suggested. She nodded wordlessly. "May I come in?" I asked politely. The house was filled with the usual suspects, my father's business associates, country club friends, extended family. I navigated through them with the same confidence I developed walking collectors through exhibitions. Several people did double takes, clearly remembering the struggling artist from a year ago, not this polished professional before them. My father held court near the fireplace, tumbler of scotch in hand. His eyes narrowed when he spotted me, but he made no move to approach. Jessica stood nearby with her boyfriend, Mark, I'd learned his name was, giggling at something he said. I greeted relatives, accepted a glass of wine, and waited for the inevitable confrontation. It came sooner than expected. My Uncle Charles approached with a hearty, "Amanda. Heard you've been making waves in the art world." Heads turned. Jessica and Mark drifted closer. "Nothing dramatic," I replied with a modest smile. "Just building something I believe in." "Building?" my father interjected, unable to resist. "Last I heard, you were renting some rundown space downtown." Before I could respond, Mark stepped forward. "Mr. Reynolds, Amanda's being modest. Horizon Gallery is the most anticipated opening this season. Every developer in the city is trying to get on the invite list." The silence that followed was delicious. My father's expression froze between disbelief and confusion. Jessica's mouth actually fell open. "Horizon Gallery?" my mother asked tentatively. "I'm the director," I said simply. "We open next month." "Director?" Jessica repeated, her voice higher than usual. "Like, of the whole gallery?" "That's generally what the title means," I replied, taking a calm sip of wine. Mark nodded enthusiastically. "Lancaster's new satellite location. They've been keeping her appointment quiet to build excitement for the launch." He turned to me. "I've been telling my firm we should talk about commissioning a piece for our lobby." Werner specifically mentioned your sustainable concept. My father's grip on his scotch tightened. Werner Development was one of his firm's biggest clients, one he'd been courting for years. The idea that I now had a direct line to Jackson Werner himself was clearly landing like a punch to his solar plexus. Werner? He asked, attempting casualness. You know Jackson Werner? We're discussing a major installation, I confirmed. His team appreciates our focus on sustainable art and local artists. Jessica stepped closer, her competitive instinct clearly activated. Mark works directly with Mr. Werner's design team, she said, gripping his arm possessively. I know, I replied with a genuine smile. Diana mentioned you were in their development department. Mark nodded. That's how I recognized you at your mother's birthday. Your preliminary designs for our headquarters installation had just crossed my desk that morning. I watched as several emotions crossed my father's face: disbelief, confusion, and something I'd rarely seen, uncertainty. His entire identity was wrapped up in being the successful one, the provider, the man with connections. Now his cast-off daughter was casually discussing business with people in his circle, people even he couldn't easily reach. Amanda, my mother interjected, clearly trying to navigate this shifting dynamic, you should have told us. We've been so worried. Have you? I asked, keeping my voice level. I haven't received a single call asking if I'm okay. My father cleared his throat. Well, clearly our concerns were unnecessary. I met his gaze steadily. They always were. The tension was broken by the dinner announcement. As we moved toward the dining room, I noticed Mark watching me with new interest, not romantic, but professional. The way you look at someone whose influence might be useful. I was seated far from my father, but I could feel his eyes on me throughout dinner. The old Amanda would have been hurt by the distance. The new Amanda recognized it as respect, the kind that comes from realizing you've completely misjudged someone. As dessert was served, my phone discreetly buzzed. I glanced down to see Diana's message: Jackson Werner confirms. Full installation commission. 6 figures. Contract next week. I allowed myself a small smile, tucking the phone away. Across the table, Jessica was watching, eyes narrowed with curiosity and something else, the dawning realization that her perfect narrative had just been disrupted. My art wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. And I no longer needed their permission to succeed. The evening of my father's birthday dinner ended with superficial pleasantries. No one directly addressed the elephant in the room, that I had transformed from family disappointment to someone with genuine professional clout in just 1 year. Instead, there were awkward questions about the gallery, vague comments about how interesting my career path was, and not a single acknowledgement of how they had abandoned me. I left that night with a strange hollowness. The validation I'd expected to feel never materialized. Instead, I saw my family through new eyes, not as the infallible authorities of my childhood, but as deeply flawed people committed to maintaining appearances at all costs. 2 weeks later, preparations for Horizon Gallery's grand opening consumed my every waking moment. Diana had handed me real responsibility, and I was determined to make our launch unforgettable. I selected the final artists for our inaugural exhibition, approved lighting installations, and worked with PR to generate buzz. One Tuesday afternoon, as I reviewed catering options in my new office, my assistant knocked tentatively. There's someone here to see you, she said. A Jessica Reynolds? She doesn't have an appointment, but she says she's your sister. I set down my pen, surprised. Send her in. Jessica entered cautiously, looking out of place in her corporate suit amidst the creative chaos of my office. Gone was her usual confident swagger, replaced by an uncharacteristic hesitancy. Your gallery is nicer than I expected, she said, eyes scanning the high ceilings and exposed brick. Thanks, I replied, not making it easier for her. What brings you here, Jessica? She fidgeted with her designer handbag. Mark mentioned the gallery opening is invitation only. Ah. There it was. That's right, I confirmed, leaning back in my chair. We're at capacity. Oh. Her disappointment was visible. It's just that, well, Mark says Jackson Werner will be there, and Dad was hoping. I let the silence stretch, watching my sister squirm. The Jessica I knew never asked for favors, she demanded them. Dad wants an invitation, I finally stated. Not a question. Jessica sighed. Yes. He says it would be beneficial for the family. Beneficial, I repeated, the word tasting bitter. Not, I'm proud of you or I was wrong. Just beneficial. Amanda, you know how he is. He's never going to say those things. Then why should I invite him? Jessica looked genuinely surprised. Because he's your father. Is he? I asked quietly. Because fathers don't typically throw their daughters out on the street and cut off all contact for pursuing their dreams. Jessica had the grace to look uncomfortable. He was angry. You know his temper. And what's your excuse? I challenged. You didn't call once, Jessica. Not to check if I was sleeping on the street or if I had food. She glanced down. I didn't think it would last this long. I thought you'd come to your senses after a few weeks. Come to my senses, I echoed. You mean give up everything that matters to me and fall in line? It wasn't personal, she insisted. It was entirely personal, I countered. You watched them cast me out, and you did nothing. Jessica's expression hardened slightly. You chose art over family. No, I corrected her. Dad gave me an ultimatum. Art or family. He's the one who decided I couldn't have both. We stared at each other across my desk, the gulf between us wider than the physical distance. So that's it, she finally asked. You're just going to shut us out forever? Some kind of revenge? I shook my head. This isn't about revenge, Jessica. It's about respect. I deserve better than what this family has offered me. Something shifted in her expression, a flicker of understanding, perhaps. Or maybe just resignation. I'll tell Dad you said no, she said, turning to leave. Wait. I wasn't sure why I stopped her. Maybe because despite everything, she was still my sister. I'll send 4 invitations to the house. What you all do with them is up to you. Her eyes widened slightly. Really? This isn't forgiveness, I clarified. But maybe it can be a beginning. Jessica nodded, suddenly looking younger and less certain than I'd seen her in years. Thank you. After she left, I sat alone in my office, wondering if I'd made the right decision. Part of me wanted to withhold the invitations, to make them feel the exclusion I'd experienced. But another part recognized that continuing the cycle of hurt wouldn't heal anything. The night of Horizon Gallery's grand opening arrived with perfect early autumn weather. The space gleamed under strategic lighting, each artwork positioned to create maximum impact. Press gathered outside, along with a line of the city's cultural elite anxiously waiting for doors to open. I wore a deep emerald dress that the old Amanda could never have afforded, my hair styled in sophisticated waves. Diana stood beside me, radiant in her element. Are you ready? She asked with a supportive squeeze of my arm. I nodded, though my stomach churned with nerves. Not about the gallery, but about whether my family would show. The doors opened. Guests flowed in, champagne flutes were distributed, and the space quickly filled with appreciative murmurs. Critics scribbled notes, photographers captured the scene, and collectors discreetly signaled interest in various pieces. Jackson Werner arrived with his entourage, making a beeline for me. Ms. Reynolds, he boomed, your vision is exactly what this city needs. We were deep in conversation about his installation commission when I spotted them near the entrance. My mother, father, Jessica, and Mark, looking uncomfortable but present. My father wore his best suit, the one reserved for closing major deals. I excused myself from Jackson and approached them, conscious of how many eyes were watching this reunion. You came, I said simply. My mother stepped forward first. The gallery is beautiful, Amanda. My father surveyed the space with a businessman's calculating eye. Impressive turnout, he acknowledged gruffly. Thank you for the invitations, Jessica added. The conversation felt stilted, formal, nothing like the warm family reunion movies portray. But they were here, standing in the physical manifestation of the dream they'd dismissed, forced to acknowledge its legitimacy. Amanda. Diana called from across the room. The journal critic needs you for a quote. Excuse me, I said to my family. Feel free to look around. There's champagne at the bar. As I turned to leave, my father cleared his throat. Amanda, he said, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. Perhaps we could discuss your business model sometime. I might have some insights to offer. I paused, recognizing this for what it was, not an apology, but the closest thing to respect he could muster. An acknowledgement that what I'd built was real. I'm pretty busy these days, I replied evenly, but my assistant can check my calendar. His eyes widened slightly at this reversal. Now he would need to request time with me, not the other way around. Of course, he said stiffly. I navigated through the crowd toward the waiting journalist, stopping briefly to speak with collectors and artists. From the corner of my eye, I watched my family awkwardly making their way through the space, clearly out of their element in this world I'd created. Jackson Werner intercepted them, introducing himself to my father, whose expression betrayed his shock at being approached by someone he'd been trying to reach for years. I couldn't hear their conversation, but I saw my father glance in my direction, reassessing. Later, as the evening wound down and the crowd thinned, Jessica found me near the bar. Your show is a success, she said, sounding genuinely impressed. Thank you. She hesitated. Dad's been talking with Werner for over an hour. I've never seen him so deferential to someone. I smiled slightly. Werner appreciates authenticity. Something our family doesn't exactly specialize in, she admitted with unexpected candor. No, I agreed. We don't. Jessica swirled her champagne thoughtfully. I didn't understand before. When you left, I thought you were being dramatic. Throwing a tantrum. And now? Now I see you were just brave. Braver than I've ever been. The admission hung between us, fragile and unexpected. It's not too late, I said quietly. To find your own path. She gave me a sad smile. Maybe. But I don't have your courage. As the last guests departed, I found myself alone with my parents near the gallery entrance. My mother seemed uncertain, my father unusually subdued. Thank you for coming, I said, filling the awkward silence. My father nodded stiffly. The Werner connection could be mutually beneficial. Of course. Even now, he saw this only in terms of business advantage. That's not why I invited you, I replied. He frowned slightly. Then why did you? I met his gaze directly. Because I wanted you to see that you were wrong about me. About all of this. My mother inhaled sharply. My father's jaw tightened. Amanda, my mother began, but I shook my head. I don't need an apology, I told them. I just need you to know that I'm not coming back to the fold. Not on your terms. If we have a relationship moving forward, it will be as equals. My father studied me for a long moment, seeing not his little girl but the woman I'd become, accomplished, determined, and entirely beyond his control. You've changed, he finally said. I smiled, feeling the weight of the past year, all its pain and triumph, in that simple acknowledgement. Yes, I agreed. I have. Horizon Gallery's opening night exceeded all expectations. Art critics praised our innovative approach to sustainability in fine art. Local media covered the event extensively, featuring my unlikely journey from disowned daughter to gallery director. Sales from the opening exhibition surpassed our projections by 40%, and Diana was ecstatic. This is just the beginning, she told me during our post-opening analysis meeting. We've already received inquiries about hosting corporate events, and 3 new artists have requested representation. I smiled, allowing myself to fully absorb the success. The Werner Commission alone will keep us in the spotlight for months. Speaking of Werner, Diana said, sliding a folder across her desk. He wants to discuss expanding the installation to their other properties. We're talking potential 7-figure deals over the next few years. I flipped through the preliminary contract, my mind racing with possibilities for the artists we could feature. This was everything I'd dreamed of when I first dared to imagine my own studio, a chance to elevate emerging talent while championing sustainable art practices. As I drove home that evening, my phone rang through my car speakers. My mother's name flashed on the dashboard display. I hesitated before answering. "Hello?" "Amanda," she said, her voice overly cheerful. "I was thinking perhaps you'd like to join us for Sunday dinner this weekend? It's been so long since we've had a proper family meal." The invitation surprised me. While my family had attended the gallery opening, there had been no real reconciliation, just a tentative ceasefire built on their newfound awareness of my success. "This Sunday?" I asked. "Yes, dear. Your father specifically suggested it. He was quite impressed with your gallery." Of course. My father hadn't been impressed with my artistic vision or proud of my perseverance. He was impressed with Jackson Werner's presence at my event. With the business potential I now represented. "I'll check my calendar," I said noncommittally. "Wonderful," my mother exclaimed. "And Amanda, your father mentioned he'd like to discuss a potential collaboration. Something about combining Reynolds Consulting's connections with your artistic direction." There it was. Not a dinner invitation but a business proposition. Not a reconciliation but an acquisition attempt. "I'll let you know," I said and ended the call. Despite my reservations, curiosity won out, and Sunday evening found me parking outside my parents' home once again. The familiar colonial facade looked exactly the same, but I was different, no longer desperate for approval, no longer willing to be diminished. Dinner started pleasantly enough. My mother served my childhood favorites, making pointed comments about how much she'd missed cooking for me. Jessica and Mark were present, both unusually attentive. My father waited until dessert to strike. "Amanda," he said, setting down his fork with purpose, "I've been thinking about your gallery's potential." I nodded, saying nothing. "Reynolds Consulting has connections your gallery could benefit from," he continued. "We represent clients in finance, technology, healthcare, all with corporate headquarters needing artistic direction." "Sounds like you're proposing a partnership," I observed. He smiled, pleased I'd caught on quickly. "Exactly. Reynolds Art Consulting. A division of the family business. You'd have your own department, a substantial budget, complete artistic freedom. With you as my boss," I finished. His smile faltered slightly. "Think of it more as a mutually beneficial arrangement. You'd have the Reynolds name behind you." "I already have the Reynolds name," I reminded him. "It's on my birth certificate." Jessica jumped in. "Amanda, Dad's offering you a huge opportunity here. The family business has always been the plan." "Your plan, maybe. Never mine." My father's expression hardened. "This stubborn independence might feel satisfying, but it's short-sighted. Together, we could build something much bigger than your gallery." "My gallery is doing just fine," I replied evenly. "We just signed the Werner contract for all their properties nationwide. Diana's talking about expanding to a second location within 2 years." My mother gasped softly. Jessica's eyes widened. "Werner signed with you?" Mark asked. "The full portfolio deal?" I nodded. "We finalized it yesterday." My father's jaw tightened. Werner Development was the client he'd been courting for years, the one that would have cemented his firm's reputation in the luxury development space. "I see," he said, his voice controlled. "All the more reason to join forces. With your artistic connections and our business acumen." "Dad," I interrupted gently. "I understand what you're offering. But I built Horizon without the Reynolds name, without your connections, without your money. I'm not interested in being absorbed back into the fold now that I've proven myself valuable." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "This isn't about proving value," my father insisted. "It's about family legacy. is it? I challenged. Because a year ago, you were perfectly willing to cut me out of that legacy completely. Nothing's changed except now you see me as an asset instead of a disappointment. My mother flinched. Jessica studied her plate intently. I'm offering you a second chance, my father said, his voice dangerously quiet. I met his gaze steadily. No, Dad. I'm offering you one. The silence that followed was deafening. For the first time in my life, I directly challenged my father's authority and refused to bend to his will. The power dynamic had shifted irrevocably. If you walk away from this opportunity, he finally said, don't expect another. I smiled sadly. That's the difference between us. I never saw family as an opportunity. I saw it as unconditional love, something I never really had here. I stood, placing my napkin beside my half-eaten dessert. Thank you for dinner, Mom. It was delicious as always. As I walked toward the door, Jessica followed me. Amanda, wait, she called as I reached my car. You're being rash. Dad's proposal makes sense. Why fight against your own interests? I turned to face her. My interests include maintaining my independence and self-respect. Something this family never understood. Her expression softened unexpectedly. I envy you sometimes, you know. The courage to walk away. For a moment, I glimpsed the sister I'd once been close to, before family politics and competition had driven us apart. It's not too late for you either, Jess, I said quietly. She glanced back at the house, conflict evident in her eyes. Maybe. But not all of us are brave enough to start over. I drove away that night with a strange lightness in my chest. I'd finally said the things I'd been holding back for years. Whether they heard me or not was beyond my control. What mattered was that I had finally heard myself. 2 weeks after the disastrous family dinner, Horizon Gallery was busier than ever. The Werner installation was underway, with local artists creating sustainable pieces for their corporate headquarters. I'd barely had time to process the confrontation with my father, throwing myself into work instead. On a rainy Tuesday morning, I arrived at the gallery to find Jessica waiting outside, huddled under an umbrella. Her usually perfect appearance was slightly disheveled, as if she'd dressed in a hurry. Jessica? I asked, surprised. Is everything okay? She shook her head. Can we talk? Inside? I unlocked the gallery and led her to my office. She perched on the edge of a chair, clutching her designer handbag like a lifeline. Dad's furious, she blurted out. He's been impossible since you turned down his offer. He's convinced you're deliberately sabotaging the family business by working with Werner directly. I sighed. That's ridiculous. Werner approached us, not the other way around. I know, but... She hesitated. He's talking about contesting Grandma's trust fund transfer to you. Says you received it under false pretenses. My grandmother had helped me during those first difficult months with small checks from her personal account, not from any trust fund. This was pure intimidation. There's nothing to contest, I told her. Besides, I don't need that money anymore. Jessica looked at me with genuine curiosity. Doesn't it bother you? Fighting with the family like this? I considered her question carefully. What bothers me is that it took my success for any of you to see my worth. That's not love, Jess. It's opportunism. She flinched as if I'd slapped her. That's not fair. Isn't it? Where were you when I was sleeping on the floor of my studio? When I was working 3 jobs to keep the lights on? I didn't know. You didn't want to know, I corrected gently. It was easier to assume I'd fail and crawl back home. Jessica was quiet for a moment, then whispered, he's threatening to cut me off too. What? Why? I defended you, she admitted. After you left that night. I told him he was being unreasonable, that he couldn't expect to throw you out 1 year and absorb your success the next. I stared at her, genuinely shocked. Jessica had never stood up to our father, especially not on my behalf. What did he say? I asked. That I was either loyal to the family business or against it. Her voice trembled slightly. I've been staying with Mark, but it's tense. His loyalty is to his career first. I felt a strange mix of emotions, sympathy for Jessica's situation but also a grim vindication. She was finally experiencing what I'd gone through, finally seeing our father for who he truly was. What are you going to do? I asked. She looked up, vulnerability written across her face. I don't know. I've never imagined a life outside the path Dad set for me. I smiled sadly, recognizing the prison she'd built for herself, the one I'd escaped a year ago. It's terrifying at first, I admitted. But then it's freeing. Jessica studied me with new eyes. You're different now. Stronger. Not stronger. Just myself. Without apology. We sat in silence for a moment, the rain pattering against the windows, two sisters at a crossroads, one who had broken free, one who was just beginning to see her cage. I should go, Jessica finally said, standing up. I just wanted to warn you about Dad. Thanks, I replied. And Jess? Whatever you decide. I'm here. She nodded, the ghost of a smile crossing her face before she slipped out the door. The following week, Diana and I hosted a private viewing for collectors interested in our sustainable art initiative. As I discussed technique with a potential buyer, I spotted a familiar figure by the entrance, my father, alone and clearly uncomfortable. I excused myself and approached him cautiously. Dad? This is unexpected. He looked older somehow, the lines around his eyes deeper than I remembered. Your mother thought I should come see your work. Properly this time. I led him through the gallery, explaining the sustainability practices of each artist, the materials used, the vision behind each piece. He listened without interrupting, his expression inscrutable. At the Werner installation mock-up, he paused. This is what you're installing in their headquarters? Yes. Recycled materials from their construction sites, transformed into functional art. He nodded slowly. It's impressive. More sophisticated than I expected. Coming from my father, this qualified as effusive praise. I felt a strange ache in my chest, the little girl inside me still longing for his approval, despite everything. Why are you really here, Dad? I asked quietly. He examined a sculpture intently, avoiding my gaze. Jessica moved out. Did you know? She mentioned she was staying with Mark. She quit the firm too. Says she wants to explore other options. The bitterness in his voice was unmistakable. First you, now her. This family is falling apart. I shook my head. It's not falling apart, Dad. It's changing. We're becoming our own people. Isn't that what you raised us to be? Strong, independent? I raised you to understand family legacy, he countered. To build on what I created, not walk away from it. Maybe your legacy isn't Reynolds Consulting, I suggested gently. Maybe it's Jessica and me, the people we become, the lives we build. He finally looked at me, his expression a complex mixture of pride, resentment, and something that might have been regret. I don't know how to be father to daughters who don't need me, he admitted gruffly. The admission stunned me. In all my life, I'd never heard my father acknowledge vulnerability. We do need you, I said softly. Just not as our boss. As our father. There's a difference. He absorbed this, hands clasped behind his back, the businessman struggling to process an equation without a clear solution. I'm not going to apologize for pushing you, he finally said. That push made you, this. He gestured around the gallery. I smiled sadly. No, Dad. I became this despite that push, not because of it. Imagine what I might have created with your support instead of your rejection. The words hung between us, not accusatory but honest, perhaps the first completely honest exchange we'd ever had. Before he left, he paused at the door. Your grandmother always said you were the brave one. I didn't understand what she meant until now. It wasn't an apology, but it was an acknowledgement. For now, that was enough. 3 months later, Horizon Gallery hosted a special exhibition featuring work from a surprising new artist, Jessica Reynolds. Her corporate career abandoned, she discovered an unexpected talent for metal sculpture, creating delicate pieces from discarded industrial materials. My parents attended the opening, my mother effusive with praise, my father reserved but present. We weren't the perfect family from glossy photographs, and we never would be. But we were learning to see each other clearly, perhaps for the first time. Diana found me alone near the end of the evening. Quite a journey from that rundown studio, isn't it? She observed. I nodded, watching my family across the room, damaged but not destroyed, fractured but slowly healing. You know what true success is, Amanda? Diana asked. It's not just building something valuable. It's becoming someone you respect when you look in the mirror. I smiled, feeling the truth of her words settle deep within me. My greatest creation wasn't this gallery or the art within it. It was the woman I'd become, one who stood firmly in her own light, who no longer needed anyone's permission to shine. The broken girl who'd left her father's house with nothing but a suitcase and determination had found something more valuable than approval. She'd found herself. And that was a masterpiece worth every sacrifice.